Do you want to know why I liked the Switch so much? Well, it's because the gimmick wasn't much of a gimmick. It was practical and a convenience. It ended the debate about which game should be on which console. It gave us the best of both worlds, and there was no hyper-fixation on motion controls, dual screens, 3D, or gamepads. The Switch itself was just about the games. The Switch 2 now appears to be just more of that. I'm not sure if it will be as commercially successful as the original Switch for this reason, since this doesn't appear to be some groundbreaking new technology. The novelty of a hybrid console can only really be felt once after all, and while a new console is great, I imagine many people might be content with their current Switches for a while. With that said, I think this is awesome news for us. The people who care about new games more than anything else are going to get new games. And as a massive Mario Kart fan, the idea of the first original console game in the series in over a decade is a monumental occasion for myself. This new Mario Kart game is likely to have a new gimmick. Mario Kart 7 and Mario Kart 8 introduce new ways to traverse, and it is going to be difficult to top MK8's feature of drive anywhere and everywhere right side up or upside down. But there seems to be a front-running idea of what the gimmick is going to be. Maybe we never got an original Mario Kart on the Switch, but perhaps this strategy bought them more time to find that gimmick. Super Mario Bros. Wonder has been out for a year now, and there are rumblings about a Wonder Flower conveniently lying around the track, matching one of its appearances in the game. It's a little bit hard to see, but I do think I see some tiny eyes on it from the distance, and I'll just say, it doesn't look like the item box is up ahead. I'm not ready to say that it's a Wonder Flower for sure, definitely looks like it could be something else, but this is a leading theory of the first day. Perhaps it makes sense too. The track looks unusually large. It's almost begging for something to happen to drastically alter the course. Maybe that could be a bunch of trick ramps flying onto the track, and maybe that's some kind of reverse route spawning, or maybe it's both. Now of course maybe I'm wrong about this, but if the game's gimmick is shared with Mario Wonder, I'm not certain it would be as impactful as people would think it would be. It's not that I think Wonder's influence as a potential gimmick doesn't have the potential to blow even anti-gravity out of the water, or perhaps enhance anti-gravity even further, but when it comes to the actual gameplay, very rarely do these gimmicks deliver massive changes to, well, strategy. I mean, anti-gravity was cool, but at the end of the day, the difference in gameplay between anti-gravity sections and standard sections were kind of marginal. It was a cool feature because of how it influenced the track designs and the game's visuals, but outside of these aspects, it wasn't all that different to the standard gameplay of Mario Kart 8. Wonder Flowers could change up how these courses are played on varying laps perhaps, but at the end of the day, that might just be like having sector tracks or unique final laps at the very least. Double Dash was a bit of a unicorn when it comes to gimmicks in this series. The ability to swap items and play cooperatively actually changed the game completely, and while Deluxe bringing back double item boxes felt like a footnote at first since it wasn't a one-to-one return to Double Dash's system, this quote minor addition to Deluxe made such a large influence on the game that it feels completely different to play from the Wii U original, driving mechanics aside. I say that all to say this. The Wonder Flower gimmick, or anything else that they might go with instead, might be the main headline over the next few months, but they won't be the gimmick that changes everything about this series. The thing that will though, is hiding out in plain sight. So we've all acknowledged that the track is unusually large, but want to know what a large track also brings? Well, a large starting grid. A starting grid that fits perhaps 24 players. Now, people have noticed this, and they are right to say that it's a big deal, but I think the reactions I saw throughout the day might actually be underselling this, because the amount of players in a race is a change that quite literally changes the very fabric of the game's balance. Maybe it will be for the better, maybe it won't be, but one thing is certain. We are about to enter a new era of Mario Kart. In some ways, this is really fitting. The Switch's gimmick wasn't exactly flashy in the same way as the Wii's motion controls, and part of this is because we had played handheld and console games separately before, but the combination strictly gave us more flexibility in how we play, and that flexibility made a massive difference. Likewise, 24 players might not be the most flashy part of a trailer, but it will change everything about how the game is played and how it can be played. 24 people have played Mario Kart at the same party before, but never before were they all in the same race. It's a convenient change perhaps, and the flexibility feels almost infinite. I'm an active player of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We play free-for-all formats sometimes, head-to-head team formats, and everything in between. My personal favorite way to play Deluxe though is through the 6v6 format. The thing is, 6 on 6 is only half of a room now. Instead, we could play 6 versus 6 versus 6 versus 6. If I strictly want to play in head-to-head formats, The new mode sounds like it would be 12 versus 12, and of course, there's 8 versus 8 versus 8 on the table too now. All of the possibilities are truly exciting, but I won't lie and say that I am not a little bit nervous about it all. I am of course aware that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is far from a perfect game. There's a lot of things about it that I hope they shift off of in this new game that I might talk about at a later date, but overall I think they did a good job on it. It was a pretty well balanced game in my opinion, and you can surely do a lot worse than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Because balance is hard, and well, it just got a whole lot harder. So let's bring up the questions nobody's really talking about right now amidst all the hype. First off, I see some coins. I guess they're returning, which isn't the end of the world to me. I've always felt that coins have given players reasons to change up their general racing lines, and they act as a way to create more decisions for a player. But here's the thing, the game isn't designed for 12 players anymore. There's now twice as many people competing for every coin. Are 2 rows of 2 coins going to cut it for 24 player races? I mean, I doubt it. In the strong lobbies in Deluxe, it's already tough enough to get coins since every player prioritizes them, and 24 people is going to make this tougher. The thing is, it's not as simple of a fix as just adding more coins to the track in general, because first place still approaches all the coins first, and having more coins is probably just going to make first place overwhelmingly strong. And while it isn't a bad thing to reward players who are in the front, a level of balance does need to be established to keep the game fun. I feel like in this potential timeline, the coin item would actually become even more valuable. People are not going to want to hear this, but if the coin economy is barren in this game, pulling a coin in 8th place may be more of a blessing than pulling a mushroom. The thing is, even if that were to be true, using a coin is not exactly exciting for a player. And if the goal is to have fun with items, this would be an alarming aspect of the game. But there's even more to this. With twice as many players, do we see an uptick in blue shells and lightning bolts per race? Will a blooper hit you every 5 seconds? I mean, it's all possible. Maybe the answer is just to remove double item boxes, and I haven't really seen any double boxes in the trailer yet, they aren't confirmed yet, but doing so comes with a consequence as well, since it arguably removes some player agency from the game with less items per player. It's not a secret that some items you have to put some limits on. There can't be more than 1 blue shell in play at a time, or a ghost or a piranha plant for instance. There can only be 3 bullet bills in play in Deluxe. Will they go back to only 1 lightning bolt being allowed to be in play like in Mario Kart Wii? Or will they keep the ability to have multiple like in Deluxe? Because personally, I liked how it worked in Deluxe. If there is some level of stress to find the optimal time to use it so you don't lose it, it actually nerfs the item's effectiveness. But if there are 24 players in this game, how many people are going to be able to obtain it? If there are many, will there be any strategy in using it at all, or will it just be a spam fest every time you get one to ensure you get to use it? Speaking of this item, how long will it take first place to grow now after a shock? Will the time double? I sure hope not, and I think the solution would be to just speed up the time between each racer that grows, but again, we won't know what is chosen until later. But since we know that there will be some form of caps on what items can be in play at one time, will it make the item system perhaps more plain? Because now the mid-pack is going to be larger, and what this means is that the notorious mid-pack items will be obtainable by more players at any given one time. Now, there are times where items can't be obtained to begin with. Many items can't be pulled in the first 20 or 30 seconds, like super horns. You don't want the whole room to just get them next to each other and spam them all at the beginning of a race. And every time a lightning bolt is used, another can't be obtained for at least 30 more seconds. But in a room with this many people, in order for half the lobby to just not be pulling the same few items over and over, there's probably going to have to be some new ones. But who's to say that potential new items will be well balanced too? Because a lot of newer items in the series are notorious for not actually being that well balanced. Are we ready for a world where instead of 12 players in a lobby, it's 12 players in range to pull fire flowers, triple reds, and boomerangs? Can such a bloodbath even exist? Perhaps it'll be so chaotic that it'll create more need for players to catch up, which leads to more people bagging. But how many players can feasibly bag for items and coins at once? As mentioned, each track has a limited amount of coins, and if everyone is broke and too slow to catch up, this will further incentivize bagging. Now question, are they going to run back a distance-based item system or a hybrid system like Deluxe? Because if they do, we might have 12 people in range to pull a blue shell at once. Yet if they go back to strictly a position-based item system, 12th place probably isn't going to give you bullet bills anymore. Will you feel sane pulling triple reds in that position with 11 people in front of you just because you're technically in the mid-pack now? The act of being in first place is going to be much rarer now as well, since you're facing off against twice as many people in full lobbies, and I truly wonder if we've really grasped what this actually means. It's not that players should expect to always be in first, of course, you have to earn it, but it is a bit of an empowering feeling that people like to feel, and it's just not going to be felt as much anymore. I mean, it is hard to win races online. A bunch of new players are going to struggle that much more to win races now because their piece of the pie is simply smaller now when it's being shared with twice as many people. Additionally speaking, even when you are in first, there will probably be more players on your tail now. Is it ever going to be possible to actually establish any advantage or space away from other players in this game? Or is it going to be a constant barrage of shells being thrown around? Don't get me wrong, the items are what make Mario Kart a game that's truly worth playing, but finding the right balance is of course not easy. And even outside of the game, I have some concerns. How much harder will it be to organize matches with double the players? The chance of someone showing up to a tournament round late now is doubled. The chance of a room crash might be doubled too. The amount of words spoken and team match calls can't possibly be doubled too, right? I mean, it's already a hectic feeling when communicating with teams of 6. Now imagine 12 people. So the question of the night is clearly, is bigger always better? Because I would argue that it's not. I don't know what tournament formats are going to look like in the future. Maybe 24 players is just a silly mode that people play for fun, and custom rule sets are made by the serious players. It's all going to be something that we have to figure out. And it's hard to argue that having the option to play with 24 racers could ever be a negative as well. It will not stop players from playing in other ways if that's what's preferred. But with that said, Mario Kart Wii and 8 were designed with 12 players in mind. This game likely won't be. So for me, I'm crossing my fingers that those modes with less players are still balanced in their own right. I'll just say, it's a lot of work on the part of the developers, but they have had a decade to work on it, so hopefully the end results are good. Personally speaking, I would like it if Nintendo did what feels like the impossible here and made a perfectly balanced 24-player Mario Kart game. I feel like it's going to be super hard. Logically speaking, this is just a balancing nightmare. 16 players already seems really difficult, but their ambition was clearly greater than that. So are they actually going to pull it off? Well, we're about to find out. So anyway, there are a few other things I want to bring up too, but before I get to them though, just a reminder, if you like what you've heard so far, a like and a sub does go a long way for me. I'll be covering the entire hype cycle over the next few months from the perspective of a competitive player with the heart of a casual one. And if you like the analytical takes and the occasional strong opinions, this is the place for you. Every video we make here intends to be a conversation starter, and it's my hope to see even more people commenting on them in the future with interesting takes of their own. But anyway, let's get into my final notes now. You might have noticed that I've refrained from using the words Mario Kart 9 up to this point, despite the fact that many others have. And this is because I don't think that this will be the name of the game. Mario Kart naming trends have never really stayed constant for more than 2 games at a time, and I feel like they're going to want to go with something completely new after a decade of Mario Kart 8. I feel like X is very much in play still as a console follow-up to Tour, but I guess we'll have to see on this one since they seemingly didn't drop the title of the game anywhere. Of course, it's fun to have this conversation to begin with. This is unmistakably a new game. I'm not going to waste your time with any of the details that you probably know about already, but here's the thing worth noting in my mind. Expectations have been delivered. There's no takebacks regardless of whether or not this was even real gameplay. Nintendo now has to deliver a new Mario Kart, and they even have to deliver on 24-player races. It has been established. Now again, the track we saw was gigantic and looks fitting for 24 players, and many are speculating that it might be the first track in the entire game. So what does that mean? Well, there are theories out there. I've seen some say that the open world feeling this track gives off might be a bigger indication of some kind of story mode, since it doesn't feel like any Mario Kart track we've really ever seen before. I won't rule it out, of course, but I feel like that probably isn't the case, given the track seems to have a title, that being Mario Bros. Circuit. That name makes me feel like this is a follow-up to Mario Kart Stadium in a sense, and we should probably be grateful if that's the case. It doesn't look like much of a standard circuit, and I think that's a positive sign when it comes to track variety. Perhaps the Mario circuit of this game will be your more standard circuit track in the same way that MK8's was, but only really having one true circuit again is nice for variety. For what it's worth, my friend Wacko, and one of the most active members in my Discord community, pointed out to me that Mario Bros. Circuit might actually be a little bit of a nod to the old Mario Bros. Super Show, where the Do the Mario outro scene plays. I can kind of see the connection, and it's really cool if it's true, and it would fit the name of the track quite well. If it's true that this circuit course is different, just a warning though, it might open up the door for some of the more plain circuits to appear as retro courses. Luckily for us, that's not going to be Toad Circuit again since it wasn't skipped over in the Booster Pass, but there are a few others out there. But that's if retro tracks are even in the picture to begin with. Now, I would say it's probably likely, but we won't know until we see one definitively. One of the things that gives me pause on assuming that they will automatically be in though, is that the track we did see doesn't look very much like these retro courses at all. It looks like it was scaled for a 24-person race, and it looks like that very wide version of Mario Circuit 3 present in the booster pass, except with all the, soul. But it even looks like it was scaled for 200cc in particular, which is not really the case for any of the retro tracks that we'd be talking about. One thing that hardly gets mentioned these days is that 200cc came to Mario Kart 8 after launch. The tracks in that game weren't designed with 200cc in mind, but that's a complete possibility for the new courses now. And I'm not sure if I would prefer it this way, but the next trailer is definitely going to tell us more in this regard. I'm not ruling things out completely that 200cc is something that they really want to emphasize in the future as a main mode. But if they are redesigning the tracks in general, it might make retro courses a weird fit in general. With how many they just gave us in the booster pass, part of me wonders if it was a last hurrah in a sense. Personally, I hope this isn't the case, but again, we'll see. So I guess the last thing to worry about is game timing. Personally, I hope it's in the summer. I need a few months to wrap up on some YouTube projects and prepare for this game with the Mario Kart Central staff and its tournament hosting team. Of course, MomoCon 2025, the biggest Mario Kart 8 Deluxe LAN out there, is at the end of May, and it appears like right now it might be in place to be the final Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Championship, if you will, with eternal bragging rights on the line. And perhaps Riptide in the fall will be the first major LAN tournament for the new Mario Kart, which would be super exciting too. Nintendo really knocked it out of the park with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's LAN mode, and I hope they commit to its inclusion again in the future. And considering they used LAN mode for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Championship Cup that they hosted themselves, I have high hopes for its inclusion in the future of in-person tournaments in general. And really, this excitement extends to the new era to begin with. 24-player races are going to be a big deal, and they have the potential to change everything about this series through and through. Yes, thinking about item balance of 24 players is scary, and it's going to be hard to top Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in my opinion, but I've always been about embracing the new, and the new is finally on the horizon. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'm excited to race with you all on this game soon. Until next time.